Welcome to Faith Works Live. Here's your host, Rebecca Haynie.
So glad you're here. This is Faith Works Live. The world waits with bated breath for the wisdom from our excellent guest of the hour and a man of his time, a man for all seasons, Dan Hudson from Pathway Church in Johnston. Dan, how are you, brother?
I just want to say that I'm going to do everything I can to distract you because this is awful. This is going to be terrible.
It's going to be wonderful. Thanks so much.
I hate every moment of what we're about to do.
Immediately dissension in the ranks. Thanks a lot.
I'm just saying.
It's going to be good. See, we're doing this crash course on spiritual disciplines, right? So if you are just tuning in and this is strange and new to you, well, welcome to the club. We're happy to have you. But this has been really fascinating for me. I'm already learning a lot. We're now on week 4, and we've been talking about all manner of things, kind of those spiritual basics, that 101 of being transformed as that daily walk, right? That's what does a disciple do? We follow after our teacher. That's literally, we're students. We're learning at the feet of Christ. We're following after him. We learned about prayer and fasting. We focused on Bible study and meditation. And now this week, something new for your consideration. A new virtue has entered the ring. And Dan, this one kind of takes me by surprise, but maybe it shouldn't. This is one that I think might be coming back around. It's a virtue we don't hear a lot about. It's the biblical virtue of simplicity. What does this have to do with the Christian life?
Oh, man. Well, it really starts with the words of Jesus himself in Luke 6, when he says a good person produces good out of the good stored up in his heart. An evil person produces evil out of the evil stored up in his heart, for his mouth speaks from the overflow of his heart. And we always think of that in the terms of the words we say, everything I say obviously came from somewhere inside. It's Jesus is stating the obvious, something we know. And even when we didn't mean to say it, it's only because we had been like wisely guarding our tongue. And then we get angry or hungry or whatever. And then we say what we're really thinking. And we're like, shouldn't have done that. Well,
sorry for what I said when I was fasting.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my new t-shirt. Sorry, go ahead.
But Jesus says here that a good person produces good out of the good stored up in his heart. I mean, it's not just words, but stuff, the things we do, how we live. It goes beyond the words. And so you look at our life and like the car we drive is an outflow of what's going on inside us, the clothing we wear. I wish I told the class, it's like, I don't know what that says about the shirts I always choose. Usually I'm just trying on purpose to be a dork, but that it tells me on the inside. So, I mean, you can,
You are one of a kind, Dan Hudson.
But I mean, the food we eat, the things we spend our money on, the people we hang out with, they're all signs, outward signs of what's going on inside our hearts. We do what we want to do, basically. And I taught through these a few years ago, so it's not like it's all brand new to me or anything, but I committed myself to restudying each week afresh and going into it. And man, going through just reading the verses and just thinking this through just really kind of beat me up. I mean, don't cry for me. I'm I am not a good example of simplicity. That I'll put it that way.
Well, and in the Western world, I mean, how many of us can truly say that we only have what we need, for example? And maybe we'll get into that, what that looks like. And does that mean we can't have an extra pair of shoes, for example? Like, how minimalist do you really want to go? And that's one term these days that's very it's very trendy to talk about minimalism. I think because we've had so much largesse, we've had so much abundance. We often bemoan this, actually, like, can we really understand what it's like in the first century mindset to get into the feet of the Son of Man who has no place to lay his head? Literally, like Jesus didn't own a home. Jesus didn't have a place. He was reliant on charity in many basic ways. And God took care of him. Obviously, God met his needs, but that's a completely different type of lifestyle than those of us who go through 17 extra outfits before we actually get dressed this morning. We didn't even try. We can't even handle all the leftovers that we have in our fridge. We have so many options. It's just at the point of ridiculousness, and it almost paralyzes us. We've got so much stuff that our stuff has begun to own us instead of the other way around. Yeah. And I think that's a part of at least this discussion around simplicity that is very attractive to modern ears that are so overwhelmed and we're tapped out because of all the energy that it takes to be basically consumed by our own consumption. And there's more, there's better for the Christian life than that.
Yeah. And we'll look into this, but this is more than
Mhm.
just getting rid of stuff. There's a spiritual side to this that if you become a minimalist, that in itself doesn't really mean a whole lot in the spiritual realm. It's
Okay.
the Jesus side of it that balances us. One person says simplicity is a limiting of your possessions, purchases, and personal calendar to a place where you can experience more of God's love and joy in Christ.
Hmm.
And I think, yeah, I should probably limit like all of those things because I just go 900 miles an hour all the time. My children keep saying, dude, slow down. And I'm thinking, I don't know how much time I have left. I mean, nothing's going on in my life, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, I'm at the end or closer to the end than the beginning, put it that way. And I hope I have 20 good years left. I hope I do. I might have 5. I have no, I
Right.
have
And none of
friends.
us do, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could be 20 and say the same thing. I'm just in my 50s. So I'm thinking I kind of stepped on the accelerator in the last couple of years. Like, I just want to keep going. I mean, one of these days I'll drop over. Great. I got all eternity to celebrate and dance and sing and have all kinds of fun. But for now, we have a culture that's dying and they need Jesus. And it's like, I can't do everything, but I can do something. I can do what I can do.
Hmm.
And so I just keep going faster and faster and faster. And my daughter's like, just stop it. So maybe she's the voice of God and reason in my life. But and honestly,
And there's some wisdom in that, right? Because we need some limitations.
yeah. It goes back to trust. Do I trust that God can handle this, or does He need me? Like, no, I've got to do this.
Mm.
And it's like he doesn't need me. He did fine after Moses was gone. You can go down the list. And so I'm certainly no Moses. That's for sure. But when it comes to this topic, the question is, do I trust God to supply my needs? Do I trust God to handle whatever He's going to do with this culture, with this nation? Do I trust God with this church? Do I trust God with my family? All that you could go right down the list. It goes back to like on our possession side of things. If I view my possessions as a gift from God, if I view them as something that's not mine to hold on to, I'm a steward, it's not mine, gimme, then I'm living out the inward life of simplicity. But it's when I'm trying to grab everything and hoard and pull it in and thinking, I've got this, I've got control of this, I need this money, I need that item, I need 14 more pairs of shoes because I might one day need it. If I'm hoarding everything, if they all belong to me, I refuse to let go of them. When I see someone who really needs them, and I'm like, well, too bad to be you, then I'm missing out on
Right.
what simplicity is.
Yeah. And that touches on so many different areas, Dan. I'm thinking of the greed versus generosity.
Oh, yeah.
And cultivating a life of generous giving. The Lord loves a cheerful giver, it says in 2 Corinthians, that we
Yeah.
should be so joyful. We should be so cheerful about the way that we give, but sometimes we don't. And I think that is based in fear. It's based in, what if I don't have enough? Or maybe I can give a little bit, like just a little extra off the top, but don't touch my nest egg. Don't touch this that I
Right.
need. But all of us know where those sacred cows are in our lives. All of us know that area where we get really uncomfortable if God were to ask us to give something like that up. I think we
Yeah.
all know, because those are the things that we guard. Those are the things where we don't want anybody. No preacher better touch that topic, because that's where the conviction hits. So on the
Mm-hmm.
topic of simplicity, we've talked some about stuff, right? About our money, about our possessions, but you also talk about our time. You talk about our focus.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is a huge area of where I, at least, am guilty of being not as disciplined as I should be.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely am. We started doing a homeless ministry where we go out to the homeless camps and we have a mobile grill. We open up the trailer, we pull the grill out and start cooking hamburgers and hot dogs for the folks there. And gosh, I've been doing this church thing a long time, and I've been a part of groups that have done that, and part of people in our church have done that, and I'm fully supportive. And I say, yeah, everybody give. This is really great. We've done a lot of cool things over the years. I've never been the guy to go into the homeless camp and say, hey man, you guys hungry? And I did that for the first time like 2 weeks ago because my time is precious. I need to attend a meeting. I can't go to the homeless camp. I need to do whatever it is. Doesn't matter. It was a really humbling thing for me to go in and say, you know what, I'm spending like 3 hours every 2 weeks, and I'm going into a homeless camp, and I'm learning people's names. I've seen a lot of these where like they just throw stuff out real quick and keep going because there's so much need, and that's not a criticism. I'm just saying there's so much need. They're trying to help as many people as possible. We're helping a handful, but we're setting up tables and chairs and grilling and bringing, and we're having them sit down and we're having conversations. Now I can be like, hey, Mike, man, how's your back? When I talked to you last, you were having a problem with your back. And it's like a Jesus moment going on there that I have never been a part of because I didn't give myself that time. You know, I have 100 reasons why. And it's been really humbling to me, especially then coming into studying simplicity again. It's like, talk about simple. I'm looking out the window saying, oh, it could be kind of rainy. Maybe we shouldn't go grill. And they're like, yeah, we're sleeping in a tent by the river and we're not going to eat.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. So the last time we said, guess what? Rain, I don't care. If it's raining, we have a tent. We'll throw a tent up over the grill and we'll get wet. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, I think that goes into simplicity. I'm giving up that time when I could be sitting around doing something, I don't know, watching YouTube. I mean, you know, whatever, something really important. Having me time. And it's like, God didn't make me for that. You know, we're the hands and feet.
Right.
So anyway, that's been a conviction of me that wow, I'm kind of old to figure this out. I should have figured that out a few decades ago, probably. And I mean, there's a lot of debate on all the stuff that I've, you know, time and prioritizing and all the stuff. But this was something God was leading us to, and now here we are doing it, and now I'm in the middle of it, and it's just been selfishly a great blessing on me because I've paused to say, well, you're important too, you know. That's part of the whole simplicity. Richard Foster does a lot on the spiritual discipline, so I base some of it on his writings and some from other places too. And he has a book on simplicity, the freedom of simplicity, and he identifies all these inner selves that we have, the timid self, the business self, the courageous self, parental, you know, all these different voices we have, and each one of them, he says, is like this independent voice, and they're like very selfish and very self-centered, and they want everything, you know. What happens is we decide to do something, and all the other voices, all the other selves in us start shouting, screaming. It's like, no, what are you doing? You can't do that. He gives an example that, let's say you want to sit down and enjoy some music, a quiet evening at home. You're like, I'm just gonna, you know, we get to do that. I mean, that's part of Sabbath. It could be, you know, it's just part of.
That is a choice you can make.
It's a choice you can make. But if we do that, the business self starts screaming at us. You know, what are you doing? What are you doing with this time? You know what we could be doing with this, right? I mean, there's stuff to be doing. The energetic self is like pacing back and forth, like going, dude, you're just sitting there. I mean, be real, you know, look at this. The religious self's like, what about the homeless? You know, I mean, you just keep going back and I've had those voices.
Yeah.
I go to Africa and I'm preaching a revival. I'm thinking, what about the homeless in Des Moines? And I go to the homeless in Des Moines and think, what about the world missions? What are you doing about that?
Right.
You know, and that's not anybody throwing guilt at me. That's just my own little voices saying, wait, there's so much more to be done. And simplicity is really allowing God to lead. I don't have to go to all the homeless camps. You know, my talk about homelessness wasn't to make everybody feel guilty. Oh, you're right, I should do it too. Maybe not. What's Jesus leading you to do?
Right.
You know?
It could be different.
He has not led me to do that yet, or I have not listened. But I'm having great blessing in it now. But really, it's all about figuring that out. Or where is God leading me? And then be obedient to it. And then allowing yourself to say no to the things that Jesus isn't calling you to. I can't do it all. I can't do everything. Yeah, that helps clear up your calendar. You're not saying yes to everything and every voice internally or externally. You're being obedient.
I immediately saw that clip from The Office, where Steve Carell is like, "Why are you the way that you are?" That's mainly my question. Why are we the way that we are? We talked about that a little bit with the way that the words, the things that come out of our mouth reveal the inner man, reveal the inner person. So I guess, what is the attraction towards all of these different complications, and how can we start to see them? How can we start to identify perhaps the enemies of simplicity? I can put it that way. What are the enemies of simplicity in our lives, Dan? Because I feel like the things that I want to do, that I seek to do, that I fill my time with are good things. there's a lot of good things. Like you said, there's so many things to be done. There's always something vying for my attention. And a lot of them have names and look a lot like me. As a mom,
Right.
I've got young kids and they all need help. They all need something. And so there's a lot of, I suppose, busy work, not to denigrate the work, because it's the probably the most important work, like this side of eternity, that we can be doing, is investing in our children and the next generation of
Right.
eternal beings created in the image of our wonderful, amazing God. But moms and dads know what I'm talking about. It's all day, every day. There's never a quiet moment. It's all the time. Everybody, somebody needs you. And then compound that with stuff with the business that we're doing, compound that with the radio show and trying to make a difference in this world. All of those things, it seems like there's just not enough hours in the day. There's just not enough time. And I always have to be going. And if I don't, then those other critics crop up in my head that say, well, if you get one moment to put your feet up, that's a moment that you're wasting time, girl. Like, you should be doing something else, because
you could be editing that
sleep
video
when you're dead. Yes.
Oh man.
But you get what I mean. I think that was
yeah.
a long-winded way of, and my personal cheaper than therapy confession, that there's so much. It just seems like there's so much to do. And if I say no to any of those things, then I have to make those choices. I get that logically, but they're all good things. Like, it seems like they're all valuable things. So how do I know how to make those best choices? Am I saying yes to the right things, to the most valuable things from a kingdom mindset? And that's where I get a little stuck sometimes on simplifying.
I think we do. I think that's why this comes at week 4, because it really builds off of prayer and fasting and study and meditation, and like developing the inner self. As you develop the inner self and you start becoming transformed by the renewing of your mind, and that's like letting the rest of your life catch up. I think this is where we have to just pause once. That's where I think Sabbath is good. We do have to stop and reboot and reset and say, wait a minute, there are so many good things to do. We could fill every waking hour of every single day with all kinds of good things, to the point that we're worthless because we've worn ourselves out. We just have to be seeking God's heart. I made a commitment to spend one day a week with my grandchild when he was born. And I did for quite a while. And then I got busier because I kept adding more and more and more. And it's been now several weeks, like a long time since I've done it. And somewhere along the line, I heard a podcast. I don't even know where, who knows, whatever. But I heard someone saying that Gandhi spent a day a week with his grandson. And it just hit me like, oh, man, okay. I mean, put all the differences in Jesus apart. You can say he's a world changer, right? He was a busy guy. And he figured out a way, because he thought, I've got to help pass everything down to the next generation. And I thought that's exactly why I wanted to spend one day a week with my grandson, Brody, because I thought I get to do that. I get to have an influence in the next generation. And why not? And so I, told my daughters, I've really fallen off of this and I really need to. And then like the next week, she's like, are you gonna watch them tomorrow? And I looked at my calendar and I thought, I don't have time. And I just said, yes, I'm going to, and did. And I didn't regret it a minute. My schedule's crazy, all the stuff, Sunday comes every week, like it or not. It'd be hard to stand up in front of the church and say, well, but I had to spend a day with my grandson. There's a few hundred voices yelling back, what about me?
Right.
But I think that's part of the simplicity. Is like, what's important? The next generation. What's important? My grandson, my family. So yeah, there is that time you step back, and I could have done 19 things that day and would have been doing them. And I chose not to. So I don't know if this was a Foster thing, but it's a little quote sticking out at me as I stare down at my sheet of paper here. Simplicity begins with a basic understanding that our lust for affluence in our contemporary society is psychotic. That we look at,
that's strong.
It's very strong. That's why it's in big bold print here. We crave things that we don't need, that we don't enjoy. I could have done 19 things I really didn't need to do or enjoy doing instead of what I really should have done, which I did. Oh, that's a victory that week. We buy things we don't want. We're trying to impress people who don't care. When we first got married, my wife and I, it's been 37 years ago, she worked downtown at an insurance company, and it was the big rat race, right? when she was there, it's like all that mattered was what jewelry you're wearing, what clothes, what brand you're on. And as an egotistical male who had no money, I spent way more money because I was like, my wife's not going to be the bottom of the barrel, so I spent way too much money buying her, rings and whatever, all the stuff, and making sure she had the right clothes. And then every once in a while, let's go shopping. And she's like, well, okay, and all. And so we'd go do that. And then she did that for a number of years. Then we moved to Atlantic, Iowa, a complete reverse. We started hanging out with people there that like they couldn't tell you if they were wearing zirconium or whatever. It was so different, so reverse that my wife started feeling uncomfortable wearing all this stuff. And so she started putting it away. But it like fortunately broke us of that need to impress her, because literally no one cared. And it's like, well, it's no fun to spend money if no one cares.
That's profound in its own right. It's no fun to spend money if no one cares.
And so that was a wonderful, it took us 11 years to learn the lesson. Then God said, okay, now you can come back home. And
well, and I think we're all like that to some extent. We all start comparing ourselves to other people. And we have this like rank order in our head, and we think, oh, well, I'm better. Thank God I'm not like that person over there. But, oh, well, if I could just be a little bit more like that person, or that little green-eyed monster in our heads is just always looking for food. It's a gremlin that's always hungry. And if we keep comparing, it's all too easy to, and again, social media is like the scapegoat here, because we always talk about comparison, but that's an element of it. I don't think we can deny. It's one thing to look out at an audience of 10 or 100 of our neighbors, but now there's everybody and anybody in the entire world. So 7 billion possible comparisons can enter through our video screen or through our phone screen at any time. And it can just be food for jealousy. It's food for the ego. It's just inviting us again to focus on ourselves and to focus on things that don't really matter, like you're talking about. With our focus on simplicity, I know we need to take a break because that would make Ron very, very happy. But when we're talking about simplicity, Dan, this might be a good place to take a break and just consider what it means, right, to identify what's important in our lives. That seems to be the running theme, that simplicity requires a distinct identification of what really matters, not just I would say in general, of course, what God's word says matters to everyone, but then what individually we are here for, our own individual purpose, and how that fits in, which is built on the inner life that we've talked about leading up to this discussion too. So simplicity is going to be the outward fruit of some of that inward work, the inner renewal. The spiritual transformation is going to look different. It's going to make our lives look different in lots of ways. This week, we're talking about simplicity and how that will bear fruit in the lives of disciples of Christ. When we return, you're listening to FaithWorks Live.
Your beacon, Iowa's Hope 940.
So glad you're listening. This is FaithWorks Live. Rebecca Haynie is my name, and we are getting our crash course in spiritual disciplines, because that's what we're all about here. We want to bottom line it for you, folks. Everybody's busy, right? In this day and age, you have so many different options of podcasts to listen to. I'm very glad that you're choosing to spend time with us today as we focus on what it takes to look like Christ, and these spiritual disciplines, the practices that we can intentionally put into play in our lives to develop who we are as followers of Christ, to become more and more like Jesus. This week, we're talking about simplicity with our friend and mentor, gentleman and scholar, Dan Hudson from Pathway Church. And simplicity is obviously eliminating the unnecessary from our lives. But what does that mean? That implies that we've identified those things that are necessary, that are vital, and that are important, I think, to Christians in general, to ourselves specifically. And that's a lot harder than it sounds, I think, primarily because we have all of these other voices vying for our attention. right, Dan? We've got all of these we've got ourselves, our multiple selves that we talked about. We've got all these different focuses that we could have, that perhaps we should have, and we compartmentalize. So there's that going on psychologically. But then there's all the outside influences. There's the cultural distractions that take place, the comparison game that we were alluding to before, that can be so deadly, really, to our focus. And you were saying something just during the break there that I think is critical, and it makes you stop in your tracks when you realize where those voices are really coming from.
Yeah, I think it's Foster who said conformity to a sick society is to be sick. We're trying so hard to be like everybody else, but at the same time, we know it's just not healthy. And so we're basically drinking the poison, becoming unhealthy because we want to be just like them, but we don't. I mean,
Right.
it's this internal battle, which is the whole idea of let Jesus change the internal, the inward part, and then allow that to transform what happens on the outer side. It's an inside out type of thing. And here's where it maybe is in conflict with the cultural trend of simplicity and being minimalistic. If you're just doing it because, hey, yeah, that makes sense. I saw a TV show and they said you should, ask your gadget if it loves you or whatever you're supposed to do.
Does this spark joy?
But the thing is, if you're not doing it because of the inward change that's happening, what can happen is it becomes a legalistic thing. I drive a Prius,
point.
You're driving an SUV, you're less than me. I am in a tiny house and you're in a big mansion. I'm a better person. It's like, no, you're not. You're just more simplistic. Okay. I actually literally have a friend who last week moved into a tiny home. I can also tell you it wasn't because of what Jesus is doing in his life. He's just trying to get off the grid, and so no one can find him. And so I'll never see him again. And he'll never hear this. So we're both good.
Carrier pigeon.
And that's
yes,
fine.
I'm on it.
Yeah. But I also know he probably thinks he's pretty superior to me because I'm in a larger home, not in a mansion by any means, but larger home than a tiny home for sure. So yeah, we have to be careful that we're doing this because Jesus is changing our life.
Our little Pharisaical hearts can turn anything into a competition, into this like moral, like, well, you're richer than I am. Well, how do you know? Because I have a smaller house than you. I don't have a mansion in Malibu. Now I have a 30 square foot hovel. And I love it. And I'm more holy than you. It's just it's crazy. I don't know how or why we do these little conscientious competitions, but
it's such feeble. Yeah.
And Jesus knew that. And he comes in and he's like, okay, you guys, you're my children, you're my sheep, and you have no shepherd. Here, follow me. Follow me. I have mercy and compassion. Follow me. My yoke is easy. My burden is light. And that's really what it's supposed to be. And I think about that, especially in the context of this discussion, that the yoke of Jesus, like the mission of Jesus, following under his teaching, following his path, it's not nothing, right? It is a mission. It is work to follow Christ. But the cool part is he takes the whole load. So if we're yoked with Christ, he's the one carrying the burden. And we're following along in his footsteps, to further that metaphor. So there is stuff for us to do. There's work for us to do, but it's easy. It's light. He says, if you're weary, if you're burdened, come to me and you will have rest. For I am gentle. I am meek. I'm lowly of spirit. Come and learn from me. Come and follow me. And that invitation is the most beautiful thing. I think if you're listening to this and you're being pulled in 48 different directions, any given moment, even if it's all good stuff, Jesus says, listen to the voice of Christ. Listen to the voice of the master. He says it should be easy and light. Again, that doesn't mean that we don't have to do hard things in this world. We do, but he's the one that's taking the brunt of it. And I think when I get overstressed, when I get overwhelmed, when it feels like life is just crazy and hard and it shouldn't be this, why is it this hard? It's probably because I've stepped out from under that yoke of Christ. I'm not letting him carry those burdens, or I'm trying to do everything. I'm over here turning little, tiny little tornadoes of my time. And that's not productive. That's not following after Christ. And it takes me a while sometimes to realize it. I guess I need to be a quicker study. But maybe I have yet, like a sheep, gone astray. So I don't know if that resonates with you, Dan, but I've been thinking about that lately, that invitation, that when we're feeling that way, it's probably because we've stepped away from what our actual mission is, from where he is leading us.
Right. There are some basic scriptural principles that we have to grasp inwardly in order to be simplistic outwardly. Here's one that preachers love to talk about, that all property and possessions belong to God. And we read these verses when we're having stewardship campaigns. Yeah, it's all God, so give to the church, because we're building a building. But we kind of, and it's true, it's not necessarily bad. I've done the same thing. But we miss the point, like in Leviticus 25, when he says the land is not to be permanently sold because it's mine. It's mine. It's not mine. It's not humans. It belongs to God. Psalm 50, every animal of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills, all those things, everything's mine. And the point in simplicity is to understand literally it's not mine. I mean, yes, I'm a steward and we get that and we try to teach that and understand that, but it's like, it's not mine. We just bought new pans. We still had pans from our wedding, which was 37 years ago. And it had this, like this at Sam's Club, you get free stuff, like points back, whatever. And I had all this money. I never spent it because I'm like, let's do something treat, And I thought, I can get these pans for free. And I asked my wife, what do you think? Yeah, but because if there's anything we can say we could probably use new, it'd be pans. So fully intended to throw them away. What are you going to do with 37-year-old pans, right? And then I went to that homeless camp and I saw what they're cooking on in their campfires, things that they took out of the garbage, obviously, pans that were broken and all this stuff. And I thought, there's people who it's not mine to throw away. And so I put them in the same box. I put them in our little homeless area that we're going to start giving those away to. And they're going to be like absolutely thrilled. It's like, okay, that it's little adjustments. Just like maybe God has a reason. Maybe he's going to bless me with some cool new pans, and it's because he really wants to bless someone else who wouldn't have them. If I was too stingy to get rid of my pans I've been holding on to for 4 decades.
But God knew your stinginess. God knew your Scrooge-like tendencies. You're not alone.
Like, dude, get rid of the pans.
Now it's okay though, because you're going to be able to pass this on to somebody else that you actually have a relationship with. This is going to be a blessing to them. That this is a real need, and you can help fill that need, and it's here and now.
Yeah. Now, if we all started doing that, of course, they'd be having a pile of metal by the river. So we don't want to do that. But it was an opportunity God like put in my path and my way, and like she's like, well, dude, don't throw that away. And that's part of the idea. We all have stuff that we throw away, we get rid of, we whatever. And it's like, maybe there's someone who needs it more. I have a whole closet full of stuff I could get rid of that would be a blessing to me, but even a bigger blessing to someone else. A blessing to me to get rid of it. I mean, so I have more space to buy more things that people will be impressed with. But anyway, point being,
we check our motivations, Dan. What did we learn? What did we learn?
God owns it all. That's the basic principle.
Yes, that's true.
There's a basic danger in worshiping wealth. And there's plenty of scripture on that. Like don't just stop worshiping stuff. And we
can't serve both God and the love of money, right? You can't serve two masters. You can't serve both God and money. Is that an accurate translation of that?
Right. No, that's true. And let me I should also clarify, this simplicity isn't living in poverty. Don't feel guilty if you're making $1 million a year. God bless you. He's giving you that. It's not about possessions. It's about how much you're holding on to, how much you're thinking it's yours, rather than God's blessing you with $1 million a year because he has a whole bunch of people he wants you to help and a bunch of stuff he wants you to do.
Right.
That could be too. It's really how tightly we're viewing, because you can be dirt poor and not get simplicity. So it's not possessions. It's how much I'm holding on to it. One of the principles, God is better than anything the world has to offer. My lips will glorify you because your faithful love is better than life. Life's pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of happiness to be had in life. There's friends and family and a cool car and good landscaping, or whatever, all the stuff. And the psalmist says, those are great and they're all created by God. Enjoy it. That's, God bless you. That's really wonderful. But they're all a distant second, third, fourth, whatever from God. I mean, don't put things out of position. Make sure God's always one. And I suppose I do struggle with that, because most of us shake our head with an agreement, like, yeah, that's this good verse. Amen. Preach it, brother. But then there's a deep voice inside of us saying, but I really want more. You know,
Mhm.
now
Yeah.
that I got some new pans, maybe I need 2 new pan sets. It's like, I don't know why I would need that, but trust me, in about 2 months, I'll be going, hey, Cheryl, what do you think? Think we should get more? She'll be like,
Yeah.
no,
She's the sane
no, we
one.
shouldn't.
She's the voice of reason. But how is it that that's so true, Dan? I don't know that I don't consider myself to be someone that's materialistic, but I
Mhm.
do like to be prepared for things. And so I will
Yeah.
say, oh, I want to save this. It's if I have one, pair of socks or one just cast iron skillet or whatever that might be, one drawer full of craft supplies that I'll never use because I don't have time like that.
Yeah.
Just if I have one, and for me, it's books. Okay, I'll just confess that's the idol in our house, if it's anything. And books are objectively good, wonderful things, knowledge, wisdom of the ages that sit on our shelves. But I have way more books here than, it's hoarding has been mentioned. I don't like to confess that. But I'm just saying, like, if at some point I have absolutely nothing to do for the next 137 years, I could read all the books that I have.
Yeah.
It's that level. And my husband is we are alike in that way, we too. But the struggle then is, when is enough enough?
Yeah.
And if I am afraid that I will not have enough, and therefore I just seek out of that fear or that lack of trust, more appropriately, because God says, I know what you need. I'm going to provide what you need. I see every sparrow. I see every blade of grass. I know exactly what you need, and I'm going to provide for you. Your Heavenly Father knows you need these things. So why is it that I think I have to have 2 or 3 or 4 different, copies of things or extras of stuff? Again, I think it's good objectively to be prepared. And there's a wisdom in having like your emergency fund. There's a wisdom in having more, some emergency supplies of food or in case of disaster. You
Yeah.
can be generous, whatever that might be. It's good to have extra. I think that's a very strong principle in Proverbs as well as other places. But am I so concerned? Am I so lacking trust in God that I think I can have all this stuff? Am I putting my trust in that stuff? And I mean, that's a little, that cuts close to home to think about.
Yeah. It's the basic. I think you've hit simplicity on the head, the target, when you finally can say to yourself, I have enough, and actually mean it. I'm like, I've never gotten there. I haven't gotten there yet. There's always something new, something more, and getting to the point of going, really? I would think I've been in some very poor places now. I go to Zimbabwe every year. That's poor. I mean, that's poverty. The people in the homeless camp have way more than most of the people in Zimbabwe.
Mhm.
I've been to the homeless camp. And that's, I think we have to be careful. We don't go to places like that and just to make ourselves like, feel pity or whatever, or I don't know what I'm looking for there, but self-righteous, I don't know what it is, but to be able to say, I'm okay if I'm that,
Mhm.
if that's me, okay, God, if you
Yeah.
take away my home, that's all right. You take away everything, all right. It's just you and me, we got it, and keeping him at the top, and whatever goes is just gonna be just fine.
Yeah. I love the go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, it reminds me of the concept in Hebrews 13. And we talk about how God will never leave us nor forsake us, but it's in the context of being content with what we have.
Yeah.
It's in the context. It's specifically, it's saying, keep yourselves free from the love of money.
Yeah.
Don't trust in money. And I think about the audience of the letter to Hebrews, these were people that were being actively persecuted. And throughout the rest of the letter, he is reminding them of the uniqueness of their salvation in Christ, and how Christ fulfills everything, all the prophecies. He is the Messiah. He is the one we've been waiting for. He is the perfect sacrifice. He is the atonement, all those things. So in light of that, here's what you don't have to do. You don't have to have these physical worries and fears. And he says, keep yourselves free from the love of money. Why? Because we can be content, because Jesus will never leave us. Our God will never leave us or forsake us. Never, never, never. And that is enough. It's not, you're never going to face hardships in this world, because they were, and we will. And Jesus promises this. It's not that you won't ever go without, or that you won't ever suffer for following after Christ, but that you will never be alone. He will never, ever leave you, and he is enough.
Yeah. I probably my best, one of the best things that's happened to me to really drive this home in my life, which I'm still working on, like I said, is a few years ago when a relative, I don't know how else nicely to say it, they stole several $100,000 from me, and
Wow.
I had to decide: am I going to be? Is this going to ruin my life? Is it going to cause bitterness? Or do I just, it was all legal, so it was legally stolen, but they knew. What do I do with that? Is God enough? Is Jesus enough? And it took a while. I mean, I can't say that the next night I said, oh, yep, good, whatever, and went to bed, and it was no big deal. I had to really struggle through that, and it has caused some growth in me. So I am in a better place than I was, say, 5 years ago in simplicity, because I had to honestly, I mean, is my faith real? Is God real? Or is he a convenient religious figure as I run through my life and collect all my stuff and do everything I want and have my goals and build my kingdom? Or is it really God's kingdom, and I'm just his tool, and I'm just a pawn in his game? Things like that will cause you to really evaluate. And so it took me a long time, but to see that as a blessing.
That'd
And
be tough.
I mean, it's just, yeah, is our faith real or not? And so Jesus made it real clear that an unbalanced view of wealth can choke out our spiritual life, and that was a test on me too. He had the whole parable of the sower, that some seed went into the soil that had it was thorn infested, and the seed grew, and it was productive. It was great. I mean, it wasn't productive. It was growing, and it looked like it was going to be productive, and the thorns grew too. And the thorns, weeds, started choking it out. And he explained later to his disciples, well, that's the one who hears the word, but the worries of this age, the deceitfulness of wealth, choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. Will I allow my love of money to overcome my love of God? Absolutely no. I want to be the fruitful. I want to be the fruitful soil, the seed that falls in the fruitful soil, and so it is. That's part. I guess that's the discipline. Because we're all surrounded by things that will tempt us, the deceitfulness of wealth. I've got to get $150 shoes for my newborn because they're really cool. That child will never in its life walk on those shoes, but it sure looks good. Yeah.
That was worth the pictures.
It was, yeah, exactly. I got it on social media. Everybody said, ooh, everybody was impressed. Not that you can't do that, but I'm just saying, it's so easy. Money's one of the things that could just pull us. It can pull me in a second. If I'm not disciplined, if I'm not focused, if I'm not on it, something like what I went through would have just devastated me. Or some of the desires I have of whatever sick society I'm trying to become like them, to look like them, to, drive the cars they drive, whatever, all the stuff. It can destroy me. And no. That's the discipline part. I think that's why they call simplicity a discipline. It's not natural.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to look cool.
And you do. It's effortless. Some people have that natural gift.
It's embarrassing.
And some people shop at Goodwill. I'm one of those people, and that's okay. But not that I'm saying I'm a better thrifter than you, because that turns into a whole different level of comparison. And so that's my own reality show for another time. How do we know? How do we know, practically speaking, if we're working on this area? I think we talked about identifying this and understanding if this is something that we're struggling with. How can we see those areas of excess, or those areas where we're, listening to the wrong voices? We're conforming to the wrong standards in society. How do we set our eyes on things above? How do we know that we're seeking first the kingdom of heaven, and we're, not allowing ourselves to be distracted or to be overcommitted?
Okay, yeah. I got in my little class I was teaching, we went through 10 controlling principles for the outward expression of simplicity. These aren't like, hard and fast rules, but they're just like principles, like, hey, this kind of gives you an idea where you're at. Number one, buy things for their usefulness rather than their status. Like the shoes we talked about. You can't have fun shoes for your children, but if you're going to practice simplicity, start thinking usefulness rather than status. 2, reject anything that's producing an addiction in you. That could be a lot of stuff. Watch for those undisciplined compulsions. Be like, well, one's good, but seven's better. Okay, maybe you have an addiction going on in this area. Number 3, develop a habit of giving things away. How I guess people in my life, they just give whatever they have. They give you the shirt off the back if they whatever. They don't even care. They just would. I'm not there. I like to hold on to stuff, and so I'm still working on this discipline. Number 4, refuse to be propagandized by modern gadgetry. I mean, when in the beginning, I had to have the newest computer all the time. So like every year you had to buy new, and then every 6 months. And I was like, at some point I thought, okay, this is ridiculous. My computer works. And but anyway, or whatever, phone, same thing with the phones. My phone.
One of those weird things that you don't realize, I am all about this, and I have a lot of growth areas. One thing that I realize I'm not super tempted by is having to get the newest and the best in terms of technology or really anything, which is kind of, it's strange to be a Luddite and also be in the broadcast media realm, because you think, oh, this is surrounded by all these cool gadgets all the time. But I think, what it goes back to is we didn't have TV in my house when I was growing up. We could watch movies, like we would rent them from the library or Blockbuster, which I'll explain for the Gen Zs later on. It was a simpler time, but we didn't see commercials as a result of that. I grew up in a world that didn't, and it's not like we didn't have it on radio, but still, it wasn't in our world all the time talking about all the newest toys or the newest snack foods or all those things. I didn't know. And so now I think, honestly, that goes back, and I give kudos to my mom and dad for saying we don't need that in our house. And it didn't build that covetousness about the newest and the best. I understand the attraction, but for whatever reason, I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. I don't mind. But we don't realize how often we're surrounded by these voices that are pretty insidious, because they make a profit over getting us to spend all of our money and buy all these new things. And I have shoes. I have a pair of shoes, so I don't need to go grab another one. We're hitting the shoe market really hard right now, but I don't need to go get a new one, because the ones I have work fine. They're not worn out yet. Their laces still work. All of that's still good. But I think that I need them because there's voices out there that have a vested interest in convincing me that I do. So that's just, maybe put that in the suggestion box, that if you reduce the amount of time that you spend exposing yourself to voices that have that vested interest in your discontent in getting you to buy more things, it has a surprising effect on your psychology.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Back to the practical list. That was not practical. Sorry, go ahead.
This is going to hurt you.
Uh-oh.
Learn to enjoy things without owning them, like, books.
Uh-oh.
It's in my notes right here. Library books.
Now I'm getting I'm uncomfortable. I'm on the hot seat.
You can do what you want with that.
Or
develop a deeper appreciation for the creation. Like, go out and walk when you can. Listen to birds. Enjoy the texture of the grass. That kind of stuff. There's so much of life to enjoy. Our poor current generation, all they know is a screen, and whether it's a phone or iPad or whatever they're looking at, and it's like, oh boy, there's so much to look at. Get out and enjoy it. 7 is look with a healthy skepticism for all buy now, pay later schemes, and it get you in trouble. Number 8, obey Jesus's instructions about plain, honest speech, so that they'll let your yes be yes, your no be no. Don't complicate things, and that gets all
That one's harder than it sounds, because there are lots of times when we think, oh, this is a good thing, I should say yes. Someone needs to do it, I should help. And then we end up in the situation we talked about earlier in the show, where we're overcommitted. We've got too many plates that we're trying to spin, too much juggling, and we don't have room for our own kids or our own grandkids or our first order of ministry, so to speak. So that one is tougher than it sounds, to eliminate even the good but unnecessary and put that in like the B tier of our lives, to make sure that we have room for the things that really matter.
Absolutely. When I was teaching through this several years ago, my daughter was at Iowa State, and she had like 3 weeks left or a week left or something. And she had like one of those little cafeteria jobs, those college jobs you do. And I think she had like 3 shifts left, I think it was. And there was this big missions conference that she often goes to with me, and she wanted to go, but she couldn't get off at work. And like, I've always been the don't quit, don't be a quitter, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at her and said, dude, you've got 3, you're done. You're never going back to just go ahead and quit. And my 19-year-old at the time schools me and says she wouldn't do it because I don't think that would be good character.
Mm.
So I went off to my fantabulous, wonderful conference, and she stayed home and like served Jello to college students. I mean, it was awful, but she was right. Let your yes be yes. I agreed to do this. I can't not do it. And I thought, wow, that was kind of embarrassing. So we slip on all of them periodically. We'll go forward and backward. Number 9 out of the 10, reject anything that breeds the oppression of others. If you're buying something cheap because they've got slave labor, maybe you should spend more money, and it's that that type of thing.
We can't save a few bucks at the cost of human oppression. We can't do that. Exactly.
So just be cautious of that. And number 10, shun anything that distracts you from seeking first the kingdom. Don't lose focus in the pursuit of legitimate things, which we've kind of been talking about. I have a job. I got to do that. Yes, you do. Your number 1 job is to make disciples. Don't let it interfere. Don't let the thing that whoever's paying you to do whatever interfere. Tell you can't make disciples, because your Lord said that's what you're doing. That's your first job.
As
don't
you
let
go,
it become,
right?
What's that?
As you go, make disciples.
As you go,
on your way. Wherever
you
are, and in whatever you do, first and foremost, we're ambassadors for the kingdom of heaven, right?
Yeah. So that's simplicity. I mean, it's really keying in on the inward thing. I think, like I said, I've taught this before, and I think I said it out loud. Oh, it's the inward thing. And this time I'm passing it through it again, looking at it going, no, it really is the inward thing. And all the stuff I'm doing on the outward is just a sign that I need to fix my inward in some of this stuff. How much do I see myself as a steward of God's stuff rather than the owner? And I get to bless God once in a while. Like, won't he be impressed if I give these pans to a homeless person? And he's like, no, those are my pans, buddy.
Yeah.
Oh,
dang it. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Nothing ever surprises you, does it? Nope. But the fact that he puts them in our hands, I appreciate that so much. The more that I see, like, as our kids grow up, I get to entrust them with more and more things, and I get to show them that I love them and show them that I believe in them and honor them by giving them more complex, developmentally appropriate levels of things to do. And that independence really builds. It really just can light my whole son's face up, for example, to know that he gets to be trusted with doing this or that. We've been celebrating America with fireworks recently, and so the older kids got to help Dad with lighting off the fireworks, much to my chagrin, because I think they were born with 2 eyes and 10 fingers, and that's the way that they should go through life. But
it's
all
simple.
of that being said, to me, it's very simple. But they were just so thrilled at the prospect of getting to manage something that's kind of dangerous and probably fun because it's dangerous and all those things. I say that to say that God entrusts us with managing some valuable things. He entrusts us with matters of eternity, and then if we prove that we can be trusted, He will continue to build. And whatever we put in our hands, whatever we find in our hands, God has put there for a purpose, and He's trusting us to manage it well for Him. And I just think as long as we're not thinking that's mine, then it stops the greediness. It stops that jealousy right in its tracks, because it's not about what someone else has. That's not important. It's about doing what we need to do, doing the best job we can with what He's placed in our hands, because it's going to be for a short period of time, eternally speaking. And whether that's the meal for tomorrow, whether that's the ability to bless your neighbor with a plate of cookies, whether that's, maybe you own a company and the lives of hundreds or thousands of people are in your hands, you need to manage that well. Your children, your grandkids, the influence that you have in your circle, your nieces and nephews, people's lives will be changed because they knew you. For better or for worse. And that's ours to manage. Our time is such a valuable resource that is ours to manage, and we'll never get today again. So this moment that you have, that makes me so grateful that you're here. When I say I'm glad you're listening, is because I understand that this is a slice of eternity that you're investing in this discussion and getting closer to God, I hope, by the end of this hour. And I'm glad that I've had the time to learn and to focus and to contritely and humbly learn from Dan Hudson, some areas that I need to grow in the realm of simplicity. Some of that discipline is going to be a little difficult sometimes. So that means I got to put it into practice in my own life, and I have no excuse now. So thanks for that, Dan Hudson from Pathway Church in Johnston. Any final thoughts?
No, I think it's a struggle we have to go struggle through really our whole lives. And then one day we get to go to heaven, and then we can have all the plenty we want, rolling around in streets of gold and all that good stuff. And
can you imagine what it would be like to have no limits on things like that?
oh, I know.
And to be unencumbered by all the selfishness or anything like that. We won't be thinking about ourselves.
I mean, my favorite part, I don't really care what the streets are made of, but as long as Who Hot is there, I can eat all day long, and never stop. And it's not going to hurt me.
Won't have to worry about it.
There's no ill effects.
Right. Oh, I love it.
Every time I go eat there, I always tell my kids this will be in heaven, and they're like, just good for you. Hope it is, but they might get you there quicker too.
Limits, right? Those boundaries are very important.
It'll be wonderful to not have any boundaries in food
and second helpings.
Yes.
All the second helpings we get. Oh, dear.
Feast of the Lamb.
Yes, that's true. That's Bible. And that's what I'm sticking to. Dan, thank you. If you're enjoying this crash course in spiritual disciplines, go back and check out the podcasts from the others. We're tagging these as a special collection, and we're all getting more spiritual throughout the course of the summer. That seems like a really great summer to be. I'm learning so much, and I hope you are as well. Pass this on to a friend if you're enjoying it, and let us know what you think. I would love to hear your feedback. Check out our profiles on Facebook. It's Faith Works Live. Me, I'm Rebecca Haynie, and my email is RebeccaHaney@outlook.com. We're on YouTube. If you're seeing this, that means we haven't been canceled yet, so it's a good week. And until next time, we have a mission. So let's be about it. Our mission is to love God, serve people, and live free.